Aston Villa won, Ipswich won, and it kind of feels like 2 points dropped rather than 1 point gained. And you all know I look out for Aston Villa results. I spent this morning watching the game, the full 90 minutes, because I wanted to do a video on it. And I wanted to give a point of view from the outside. I'm not as invested in Aston Villa as you guys, because I'm a Newcastle fan. But I do want Aston Villa to do well, and you know this. This is why I've made endless videos on them. So I wanted to give a point of view from the outside, because we can all get frustrated when we drop points, when you're fully invested in that team, because I do with Newcastle United, and you don't look at the bigger picture, because there was some positives to take from this game, despite it being incredibly frustrating. So I wanted to give my point of view. First of all, I thought it was a good performance overall because of the amount of chances were created, but it was an awful result. That's kind of the story of Aston Villa's season this season. Dropping points at home to Crystal Palace, drawn with Brighton, drawn with Bournemouth, just dropping needless points at home. And this is why you're probably sitting 8th in the league. But looking back at this game, we need to give Ipswich some credit, because when it was 11 versus 11, they stuck to their game plan. Their game plan was to make it difficult for Villa. They didn't allow Villa to get in any rhythm. Ipswich had a man sent off, and Aston Villa still couldn't quite get in any rhythm, especially in that first half. But I want to start by getting the negatives out of the way. The defending for that Ipswich goal was woeful. When teams aren't causing you a threat, the moment they cause the threat, you've got to see that out. And Aston Villa just didn't react quick enough, didn't stop the cross, letting the striker get across here. Liam Delap did everything what a good striker does. Well-timed finish. It was a brilliantly taken goal from Liam Delap. But I want to start with Ian Maatsen, because from his point of view, it's absolutely not good enough. He allowed Amari Hutchinson maybe to control the situation. His body position was all wrong. He closed the space but didn't engage. And once you commit yourself, even slightly, that gives the impetus to the winger. Amari Hutchinson took control of that situation, because Ian Maatsen's positioning was far too static. Once you become static, the winger can literally take control, go any direction he wants. And then Ian Maatsen allows him to pick his direction. And then what you've got to do, if you don't engage, the next step is you've got to stop the cross. You've got to stop that cross, because that cross, from where he's crossing from, is going to be dangerous. And that's what we're seeing. Disasi let Liam Delap run across him, not being reactive enough, slowing his reactions, and then Liam Delap taps it in. Beautiful finish, by the way. Top class centre forward play from Liam Delap. So I kind of understand why Ian Maatsen didn't want to commit, because Amari Hutchinson is very manipulative and clever. So he's probably been told by Unai Emery to stand him up. But once you stand him up, you've got to show him on his weakish foot. You've got to show him into an area where there's bodies, not allow him to go on the outside. And that's exactly what Ian Maatsen did. Amari Hutchinson finds a cross, and then Liam Delap puts it in. But when Aston Villa had possession, in that first half especially, they were slow, passive. It reminded us of that game away to Chelsea, where Aston Villa just couldn't control any rhythm. They couldn't string two passes together. And in that first half, I got to say, that wasn't the Aston Villa we know. I thought John McGinn was incredibly slow in possession. I thought Yuri Tillemans was good, but not great like he usually is. Moving the ball slowly, picking the wrong option. And then there was nobody having any initiative in possession. There was nobody looking to drive forward, break through the lines. And it was so easy for Ipswich to defend against. And it was incredibly frustrating for Aston Villa fans. Plenty of chances created, especially in that second half, with no end product. Aston Villa played well, dominated the game, kept possession, created chances. They didn't look in trouble apart from Ipswich's goal. Now, what Ipswich did brilliantly, they pressed high, which meant Aston Villa, especially when Kamara come off, had no line breakers, so they were going direct. What Aston Villa are really, really good at is setting up triggers, moving the ball into midfield. As soon as that ball hits midfield, you've got Rodgers on his bike. You've got Jacob Ramsey on his bike. You've got Ollie Watkins moving. And that causes the opposition so much trouble. But they couldn't do that today, because they had to go more direct, because one, of Ipswich structure, and two, because Ipswich were pressing high, and three, because their ball playing centre-back, Kamara, came off with an injury. So they lost all three of those things. And sometimes football does this to us. You have games like this where you create unbelievable amounts of chances, but your strikers are misfiring, or the opposition goalkeeper has an absolute worldie, the best game he'll ever have in his career, and the luck just doesn't go your way. Aston Villa had all three of those combined. Ollie Watkins was missing chances. Players were snapping at chances. The goalkeeper was pulling off worldies left, right and centre. And they just didn't get the rub of the green. And that's why I want to take you back to this point. Aston Villa this season are missing somebody like John Duran. Now, I don't think they're missing him in terms of the overall play, but just in moments where he can manifest a spectacular goal, where it just gets you out of games where you're struggling to break down low blocks or you're struggling to put away chances. I thought Asensio, Rashford and Malin look good today again. Certainly going to add a lot more quality to your overall play, but eventually they're not quite there yet. And I think if you look at John Duran's complexion of goals, it's all just like absolute bangers that just pull out Aston Villa out the shit. And I think you kind of miss that a little bit, because in games like this last season, when Aston Villa were just struggling a little bit just to get over the line, John Duran would come on and just bang one in the top corner. And that's what I mean you're missing. Now, I don't think John Duran is going to be a big miss overall, especially if Rashford comes good. You got Donnell Malin that's starting to find his feet. Asensio's starting to find his feet. But losing out on Kamara this game was massive, because he sets up everything from the back. He initiates and facilitates attacks. And again, I don't think you had anybody breaking the lines. You lost your composure when you were playing out from the back. And again, that made you go a lot more direct than you would normally. Just think injuries are having a big impact on your overall performance. When Kamara or Onana are not in the midfield, I do think you lack something. You lack a bit of bite off the ball, but also just somebody that can make good decisions in possession as well. And Kamara especially gives you that. I think Villa did up the tempo a little bit in the second half, especially when the substitutions come on. But I wanted to see a little bit more from Ollie Watkins. Usually he's very good at just moving off the ball, getting on the blind side, creating space for oncoming runners. Movement is key to breaking down a structured defense, so you needed more movement today. I thought he was static. He was in and out of the game. He didn't look his normal self. And what's very good about Ollie Watkins is sometimes he does come in, drop deep, and that allows midfielders to get in behind, or uses a double movement where he drops deep, looking to receive the ball, and he spins in behind him to move into the space he's just created. Or can he bring others into play? Little bit of link-up play, 1-2 touch passing, and then you're on your bike again. I didn't really see that from Ollie Watkins today. Yes, he was getting marked tightly, but it's up to you to find a way to impact the game. I just felt like watching the game, nobody really took the game to Ipswich. It was all just moving the ball nicey. Nobody really drove through their defence, tried to take risks, breaking lines until Marcus Rashford come on. Now, one thing I will say about Aston Villa this season is I would much rather be, this is going to sound silly because they're higher than you in the league, but right now, looking at Villa's performances, looking at Chelsea's performances, I'd much rather be in Aston Villa's situation, because they're still creating chances. The only time you start to worry is when those chances dry out, because the goals will come. Form is temporary, class is permanent. As long as you continue to do the right things, create the chances, the goals will eventually come. Now, look at Chelsea over the past month, maybe 2 months. Their chance creation is completely dried up. The lack of ideas, the look lost in the final third. I didn't really see that or get that feel about Aston Villa yesterday, but there is some worrying signs overall, because if you look at this, Aston Villa are, they've missed the third most big chances this season. Ollie Watkins missed most big chances out of anybody in the Premier League this season. And that goes to show in the league table. Let's get me big head out the way. If you look at the amount of goals Aston Villa have scored, in comparison, everybody else, they're below everybody in the top 11. So Aston Villa have scored the least amount of goals than anybody in the top 11. And what I find the difference is, if we go back to here, Liverpool have missed the most chances. But if we go back to the league table, Liverpool have almost scored double what Aston Villa have scored. And that's the difference. Yes, they missed chances, but they put away a hatful of chances. Aston Villa aren't doing that at the moment. Eventually, it probably will click once your players just gain that little bit of confidence. It's like once one comes, a lot will come. And I do think that'll come eventually. I do think there's going to be a game where you do win 4-5-0, because those chances you're creating, you're eventually going to stick away. So if you just stick with the team, you'll eventually get there. But I do think there was a lot of positives for today. Andres Garcia being one of them. I think he's really impressed us since he's arrived at Aston Villa. I thought he had a tough game against Wolves, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt because it was a derby in his debut. But since then, he's looked energetic, dynamic. He's trying to be creative in the final third. He's brave enough to get shots off. He's trying to make things happen, trying to be a threat with these crosses. And even defensively, he's winning these duels. He's got good recovery pace. He's looking really sharp at right back for Aston Villa. And this is what Unai Emery can do. Scout these gems and have them making an impact straight away. You look at Pep Guardiola or somebody like that. It would take Andreas Garcia about 6 months to a year to really bed into the side. But this is why Unai Emery's brilliant, because he gets his message across clearly and he puts trust in the players. And I think a player like Andreas Garcia, from what I've seen, just because of his endeavour alone to fight for every ball, to commit forward, to use up everything he's got in the tank, you're constantly going to get a 7 out or above out of 10 from him. And that's exactly what you want from players that aren't in your spine, but you add on to additions. I think he's been a great addition for Aston Villa so far, and I think the future looks bright for him. But also Marcus Rashford has come in and stepped in, and I thought today when he come on, he looked really bright, positive, he looked sharp, wanting to be dangerous, wanting to make things happen. And every time he got the ball, it felt like something was going to happen. And I think for that reason, I think he should be starting against Liverpool just to freshen it up a bit. I like Jacob Ramsey, but maybe bring him off, give Rashford a start just to freshen up that front line a little bit. And I think once he builds those partnerships, he'll make himself a better player, but also better players around him. And I do think the goals will eventually come. Marcus Rashford's going to give Aston Villa a lot. He complements everything you guys like to do. Transition threat in the final third. He's creative threat. He can score goals. He's got everything Aston Villa love profile-wise. He's quick, he's physical, and he's even tracking back, working hard. You've seen him put in that sliding tackle. So all the talent is there. Just needs a little bit of more guidance, a little bit of more confidence, and he's going to make an impact at Villa Park. I've got no doubt. On a side note, another nice cameo from Marco Asensio. Technically so clean. You can tell he's played at the highest level being at Real Madrid, because him, technically, I could watch him play football all day. But I don't think it's concerning times for Aston Villa. The result can happen to anybody. Every team in the Premier League can put out a result against anybody, especially when you're not putting away your chances. Any team can punish you. Now, just that lack of concentration is something Aston Villa are going to have to improve on. But I think with the returning of injuries, Mings, Pau Torres, Kamara, Unana, we need these bodies back, because you need consistency in your spine. I think these games, because of injuries, Aston Villa can't find that consistency. I always say what builds a good squad is profiles and partnerships, but you also need a consistent spine. In these past few weeks, Aston Villa haven't had that consistent spine. So these games will happen. You will have inconsistencies going through the season. Aston Villa are still in a great position, because from the outside looking in, especially when Newcastle had European football and won that Champions League campaign for Newcastle, they didn't qualify for European football again. I think it's vital Aston Villa do. Whether that be Champions League, make sure you get Europa League at least. And I think Aston Villa have the quality in depth, have the squad to do so. And I do think there'll be an upturn in not performance, because I don't think it was really a bad performance, but I do think there'll be an upturn in confidence against Liverpool, because Liverpool will come and have a go. That will open up space for Aston Villa, and they're so dangerous when space is opened up. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you agree with me or do you disagree? Do you see concerns in this side? From the outside looking in, I don't. I'm glad you've all stuck around, watch this video, and until next time, up the Villa. And I really do wish you well for the remainder of the season. Come on, you villains.